Hey, good afternoon. It's Mike Vincent here on Midday Market Update. It's December 10th, 2020. Got a great show lined up today. Today at the desk with me is Andrew Cox. How you doing today, Andrew?
I'm fantastic. How about you, Mike?
I'm doing quite well. I'm doing quite well. So we got a 60-degree day here in Chattanooga.
Some days you just roll out of the bed and you're in a good mood, and that 60-degree weather put me in that mood this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll get to further weather with Nick Austin here in just a little bit. But we got a great show. We got Karl Siebrecht, co-founder and CEO at FLEXE, right? Flexible warehouse space. He's got a technology for flexible warehouse space, and Bill Catania, founder of and CEO of OneRail, today, which is final mile logistics. Really interesting show. I love these two spaces.
Yeah, it's two exploding spaces right now with e-commerce and just the online demand so far this year. It's going to have big years in 2021 as well, so it's going to be great to talk about what they've seen this year and what they expect going into next year.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we get into those guests here, we also have Anthony Cox going to be here talking about economics, an economic update. We got Zach Strickland talking about the SONAR or the freight markets with SONAR. So we'll get to all that stuff here real quick. But first, let's get to some headlines here. We've got some headlines, Andrew. Take it away, my friend. Blockchain and hemp. Who'd have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought? So this first story from you is about the White House is now reviewing a draft of a final rule on hemp production, which may consider using blockchain technology to help protect drivers from being wrongfully arrested when hauling legal hemp across state lines. We got some big names behind this project. Got Microsoft, Envision Blockchain Solutions, and Blockchain Agricultural Solutions are partnering to enable blockchain to provide real-time shared information to law enforcement to not only avoid driver arrests, but also the unlawful seizure of trucks and cargo. Hemp, like marijuana, is a type of cannabis. Cannabis with a THC level exceeding 0.3% is considered marijuana, which remains classified as a controlled substance regulated by the DEA. However, because they look and smell alike, hemp shipments have been intercepted by law enforcement in some states, even though it is legal to haul across state lines. While the states may not prohibit the transportation of hemp, law enforcement does currently have the means to quickly verify whether the cannabis being transported is hemp or marijuana, according to the IFR. This is where blockchain can help. The key to this is having symmetric information that every party involved can have access to through a distributed ledger, so all the agencies in the hemp supply chain can join and have access to the information and understand which shipments are going to be hemp and which shipments may be an illegal shipment.
Yeah, exactly. So I wonder how they're going to do that. I mean, I understand the need for this because we've seen seizure and people being, arrested and so on. And some of that has actually been actual marijuana moving from one state where it's legal to another where it's legal,
or from
moving
Canada
across one where it isn't, right? Which is another situation that needs to be talked through. But this would imply that somewhere at the origin, there's verification that indeed there is no pot in the middle of this shipment of hemp, which seems to me like it'd be pretty easy to smuggle stuff. I mean, it smells, it looks, and everything, right? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I haven't read too much about how these three companies are going to actually execute this, but the idea of having data that says that this container has not been opened since it was filled full of hemp only at this time and this date when it left from this location to go to the next, all that data would be beneficial for both the law enforcement and the driver. So I'm behind the project. I like it.
I'm not saying I'm not behind it. I'm behind it as well. I think it's really good because it can solve a lot more many other issues. I should say, but I mean, it all comes down to that seal, right?
Yes, yes, it does.
Yes.
All right, so the next one I got for you is on parcel delivery demand. So if you look at the data from a sequential week-over-week standpoint, it would appear that the parcel providers are treading water, delivering holiday packages. But if you compare it this year to the last year, the story is much different. Last mile IT provider Convey said FedEx delivered about 75% of its parcels on time during the digital sales frenzy known as Cyber Week. That's from Thanksgiving Thursday to Cyber Monday. That's down from 76% the week prior to that. UPS held up a little bit better, says Convey, with about 80% of its parcels delivering on time for the same period. But given the influx of parcels and the influx of volumes that they've had to manage since the pandemic began, these numbers might be considered acceptable, 75 and 80% respectively. But when you compare it to last year, the strain on the network is visible. Last year, UPS delivered 90% on time and FedEx 91%. The biggest news of this holiday season so far came about a week ago when the Wall Street Journal reported that UPS had ordered its drivers to stop picking up packages at some of the nation's largest retailers, which included Nike and Gap. I actually wrote about this in today's Point of Sale, which will be coming out here in about an hour, and I'll add a link to the comments in the shows if you want to read it. But yeah, the title is "You Just Can't Do It." They just don't have as much extra capacity as they've added. We've seen, this is the time of the year where you see UPS drivers behind pretty much any van with four wheels and brakes, whether it's a Penske truck, a U-Haul truck, a plain white van. They're behind anything. Delaying pickups and metering capacity is one way to prevent delivery problems later in the peak season. Here's a quote from ShipMatrix president Satish Jindal. He said they are being very disciplined in what they pick up, and that is what they need to prevent a major collapse.
Yeah, it makes complete sense, right? They're trying to meter what they're taking from their people based on prior volume commitments or for that planning, so that they can, they're not going to dump other people into grease. They're spreading the wealth of pain. It seems like, right? And
yeah, it seems they're doing that, and the good thing for me is that it's Nike and Gap and brands like that are being limited, and not the local retailers, the smaller retailers that might be more, that are putting more eggs in their basket for this holiday season. They were not deemed essential early in the year. They struggled to have in-store capacity, and they've now, pivoted their businesses online. It would be disastrous for them to not have their gifts get there on time for Christmas. It would be a disappointment for customers, but a complete disaster for small retailers.
Yeah, it could certainly hurt them. Yeah, their supply chain is vital to them, those smaller ones, no doubt about it, and they can be affected much, much worse. But so the delivery, do you think that those numbers would be worse, the 70% on time, 76, had we not gone relatively 45 days earlier, the pull forward kind of thing with Amazon?
I think so too. I think that, UPS and FedEx and the big parcel deliverers, they have been working with their biggest shippers, telling them to put on their website that if you don't order by December 9th, you're not going to get your stuff by Christmas. They've incentivized them to put their discounts and their promos up months ahead, weeks ahead from normal. So they're doing their best to spread out this demand. And I think they're doing a decent job. I saw some data from ShipMatrix actually that said that they were doing a little bit better job on a percentage-wise of stuff being picked up on time and delivered on time. So it's just dependent on what data you look at. But it seems like they're treading water. They're managing it so far. Yeah. But the problem here is that there's further strain ahead. You have rising COVID cases. You have more people buying stuff, buying the household essentials online. You pair that with the last-minute shopping surge that comes, and you've got a further strain on the network.
Yeah, absolutely. You're already running into, my wife does a lot of shopping online, and I'm doing it this year as well, and you're already up against it. They're already saying, well, expected delivery is January. Well,
yeah.
Not good enough.
No.
Drive faster.
All right.
Get more people in the truck.
They're trying.
What do we got next here?
So the next one is about truck safety groups are cautioning against exemptions on hauling vaccines. Advocates for highway and auto safety, the Truck Safety Coalition, and 8 other organizations sent a letter to lawmakers stating that moving vaccines efficiently and safely must not be mutually exclusive. Here's a quote. "We understand that exemptions to truck safety rules and protections may be requested in the coming months in response to the public health emergency," the group stated. "However, these exemptions must be narrowly tailored in time and scope with appropriate safeguards to protect not only the drivers themselves, but all road users." The FMCSA has attempted to ensure that safety is not compromised by the exemptions by including a list of 9 restrictions and limitations. But the truck safety groups want more. They want negative consequences to public safety to be minimized by ensuring these exemptions. So there's 3 that they have requested. They're requesting that the exemptions are limited to the duration of the national emergency declaration. They are not too broad and clearly delineates goods and services that are essential to the pandemic response. And also they want to include precise language that these exemptions cannot be used to justify any future rollback of repeal or truck safety rules.
Yeah, it sounds reasonable to me.
I agree.
I mean, they want to ensure there's no, pork for a lack of a better term, I guess.
Yeah, I think they're just making sure that the scope and focus of this is on the pandemic, and that we don't try to, and that safety group, or that people against the safety groups try to expand this to change safety rules moving forward.
Yeah. They don't want it to be the start of a potential slippery slope that would roll back some of their progress. So yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. Perfect sense to me. What's going on in California there, my friend?
Yeah, so the next one is about a new chair for the powerful California Air Resources Board has been nominated. Governor Gavin Newsom on Wednesday nominated Leanne Randolph as the new chair for CARB. Leanne is an attorney and has been a commissioner at the California Public Utilities Commission since 2015. If confirmed by the Senate, she will become the first African-American chair of the CARB, an agency that has reshaped medium and heavy-duty trucking market with stringent emissions regulations. Randolph would succeed outgoing chair Mary Nichols, who served for 13 years and is a top candidate to run the EPA under the Biden administration.
So does this give more teeth into CARB, you think?
I'm not sure. I don't know much about Leanne, so I couldn't tell about her background. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I don't know what her input was, in her previous roles. I don't know if she's even going to take it further than CARB was, or I don't want to say more realistic, but be more, how even she is.
I just hope that she works closer with the trucking companies. That's all that I can hope. We talked about this the last time I was up here with you. In that, I just hope the new administration, we're likely going to see more regulation or a re-regulation of some of the things the Trump administration pulled out.
Sure.
I just hope they do those re-regulations with the insight from the people that are going to be affected by the laws.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully there's a give and take there, and everybody's interest is taken into account, because I don't disagree with where CARB is going and where those things are going. We definitely need to go that way, and I know you feel the same way.
Yep.
But we need to do it in such a way that is good for the environment, the planet, safety, but also the good of the economy and the people overall, right?
Agreed. All right,
Speaking of the good of people overall, let's talk about vaccines.
Yeah, and the good people overall in Canada.
Yeah.
So FedEx Canada and partner Innomar Strategies have won a $70 million logistics contract from the Canadian government to distribute COVID-19 vaccines. The contract award came as Canada approved the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, the first doses of which would arrive from Belgium as early as Monday, officials said. FedEx Canada has an extensive air and ground network in Canada. It has 32 dedicated aircrafts serving 25 domestic airports. Additionally, it has over 3,000 vehicles, including more than 270 tractors. The tender awarded to FedEx Innomar foresees little involvement in distributing the Pfizer vaccine itself. The pharmaceutical giant plans to ship its vaccines directly to locations in Canada on account of its ultra-cold temperature requirements. However, FedEx is among the companies working with Pfizer to distribute the vaccine here in the U.S. Pfizer hasn't identified its logistics partners for Canada yet. But either way, it's a big win for Canada FedEx and Innomar Strategies, and it seems like they're going to have vaccines as early as Monday.
Yeah, which is great news. We need to get those out, and hopefully they're going to be, the efficacy rate is going to be as good as promised, or better. Let's hope for even better, right? Let's wipe this thing out and move on. It's interesting, just breaking down that the tender awarded to FedEx Innomar foresees little involvement in distributing the Pfizer vaccine. But their award is not just for Pfizer, right?
That's
because Canada has invested heavily, like 400 million doses or something like that, which is like way more than
they're only going to need about 38
population.
million. So they spread out their bets across a bunch of different vaccine potential vaccines.
Right, and that's where really the most of this award comes from, is all those other vaccines, because their temperature is not the cryogenic
the Moderna
level
vaccine.
Right, yeah, that makes sense.
Correct. All right. Well, that's all we got for the news. We've got Nick Austin with some weather updates coming up next. Nick, how are you?
Speaking of the Great White North.
Hey, gentlemen, doing good this afternoon. Hope everyone out there is doing well. And it's been a pretty quiet week, actually, for a lot of the drivers out there. Most regions, roads have been in good condition. Haven't seen a lot of delays with freight flows as far as the weather. But that's going to change. There's a system out in the southwest that's going to start producing snow. That's going to hit parts of the Midwest coming up in the first part of the weekend. So let's check it out on the radar right now. It's really looking rather pleasant across most of the country. But as you go to the southwest, we have some rain changing over to snowfall already across parts of New Mexico. So what we're going to see happening here is across the Rockies of New Mexico into southern Colorado. Today through Friday, we're going to see heavy snow developing, particularly in the higher elevations in that region. And then that system is going to kind of make a beeline by Friday night into the Midwest. So this region that I've highlighted here on the map is where we're going to see, I think, the most impact from this storm. It's not going to be a showstopper. It's not going to just, freeze over the whole area and just stop freight flows everywhere across this region. But it'll be one of these kind of nuisance storms with accumulating snowfall. There'll be gusty winds with blowing snow and low visibilities at times in many areas. And it's going to affect a few freight markets from parts of the plains over into the Great Lakes, a few key freight markets that are now seeing high volumes in that head haul index, meaning they have a lot more outbound volumes available as opposed to what's coming in. So there's probably a lot of drivers trying to get to these areas, pick up those loads. We're talking about the Grand Rapids market, as well as Milwaukee, Rock Island, Chicago, places like that. But the snow, accumulating snow is going to stretch further west of that, all the way down possibly into parts of Omaha, maybe Des Moines. The forecast track has shifted a little bit northward over the past 12 hours or so. So we're just going to watch this one closely. If it heads back to the south, that means Chicago will get a lot more snow than what's in the forecast. But anywhere from about 3 to 7 inches of snow across this swath here. Winds up to about 30, 35 miles an hour possibly at times. So not a major storm. Luckily, it's mostly hitting on Saturday. It's going to be Friday night through Saturday night. So most of the storm is going to be on Saturday, when most receivers are probably closed anyway. But any drivers heading to those markets today, trying to pick up that freight, they'll want to get out by tonight, that's for sure. Otherwise, just wait until early next week. So that's really the only thing happening in the weather. We're going to keep watching the development of that particular storm. And heading into Sunday, that's going to move into the interior northeast, but I don't think it's causing any major problems there either. Just, again, kind of a nuisance storm by the end of the weekend in that part of the country. But coming up later in the show, we're going to talk about an article that's up on our website now, FreightWaves.com, about a truck driver who was recently honored for helping another truck driver who was involved in an accident during severe weather. So we'll talk a little more about that near the end of the show.
Excellent stuff. It's funny how a 4 to 7 inch snowfall is a slight nuisance for a little bit in that area, but here it would completely shut down everything, right?
Yeah, we shut down when there's 4 to 6 centimeters.
Yeah, it is. So, hey, Nick Austin, he's gone already. Okay,
Hey, no,
no
I'm
problem
still
at
here,
all.
man.
Are you still? No. He's gonna come back on. Do you have a favorite weather movie?
A favorite weather movie? Well, I mean, Twister is certainly a good one, I think.
Gotta be.
It's
how about you,
certainly
Andy?
an entertaining film, that's for sure. It's actually, believe it or not, one of the few kind of weather-themed movies I've actually seen. Most of them I have not seen. The Poseidon Adventure was a good one. The original Poseidon Adventure from the early 1970s. That was a classic.
Ernest
one of my favorites
Borgnine.
there.
Was that Ernest Borgnine in that movie? I think.
All right.
Yeah, good stuff.
But yeah, I think
How about
Twister's
you?
my favorite as well.
Is it?
I mean, I gotta say my knowledge of weather-based movies are pretty limited, but I watched Twister recently. It's one of my girlfriend's favorite movies ever. She just likes the cheesiness of it all, and it's just a fabulous movie.
Yeah,
well
well,
done. It's one of those. It's an '80s movie, right? It's one of those kind of halfway cheesy but
Is
very
it that
entertaining.
old?
I think it's in the '80s. Yeah, I think it's late '80s.
Twister?
Might be early '90s.
I don't know. I could
be
tell you.
wrong.
Zach
I don't know.
Strickland would know. I'm going to go with Sharknado.
Sharknado. I haven't seen that one. They made like
Any
3
of
or
the
4 of those.
Sharknado.
haven't
Oh,
they?
yeah,
They
yeah.
made. I don't know how they kept making those.
Stellar movies. They're awesome. Without a doubt, they're awesome. They're awesome.
All right, so we're going to talk to Zach Strickland coming up here in just a moment about what's going on in Sonar. You got any thoughts about what Zach's going to give us?
Well, I mean, it's a crazy season, right? I mean, it's we're going through specific, trends that are very seasonal in nature. However, they're not at the same time, right? I mean, kind of the trends are kind of their O-tries coming or rejections are kind of coming up and volumes are a little, they're kind of coming down a little bit, which you would normally see, but at levels much higher, right? So that the volatility, et cetera, is still there.
Yeah, it's hard to compare this year to any other year.
Yeah,
I think
you
we're going to
can't.
look back 5 years from now and just see this as a complete, I don't even know what to call it. It's going to be a complete outlier for sure on every metric, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it seems like we got Zach ready now. Zach, tell us what's going on in Sonar.
Yeah, you guys aren't far off, probably. Hopefully this year isn't something that we repeat in terms of general activity, but a lot of the carriers out there are probably enjoying at least the back half of 2020 with rejection rates spiking up to 28% around Thanksgiving, and now we've settled back down around 25%. We did expect some level of bump around the Thanksgiving holiday. Actually, last year I was looking at it, and we really didn't see, or actually 2018, I should say, we really didn't see a big bump. It kind of just jumped up and then kind of floated on up and went higher. 2018, again, very volatile year in general, but we were kind of coming out of that space where everything was extremely tight. So I was looking to see if I could find any kind of pattern in what would happen with carrier behavior, tender rejection rates. So in about 5 days, is traditionally when we start to see that Christmas effect. So that's when you start to see capacity tighten around the holiday. You know, Mike, you and I know that we start to boundary our drivers. They can't get out of certain markets, especially on the over-the-road type driver. We want to make sure they get home in time. Carriers are doing the same thing around that period of time. So they're looking at keeping their drivers, just like they did with Thanksgiving, in a certain market or region so they can get home easily. And that tends to happen around December 15th every single year. It's almost like clockwork. So this little period of stabilization, it looks like we might have hit a floor. It wouldn't surprise me if we went down a little bit more. You know, we have some undulation in that tender rejection rate in general, but it wouldn't shock me if we went down under 25% every now and again. But by the 15th, we should have a little bit more upward movement in our tender rejection rates.
Zach, what about the reefer markets? Do you see any reprieve coming for reefer carriers anytime soon?
Yeah, well, again, reefer carriers are probably enjoying these high levels of rejection. You know, the fact that they can reject as much as they can right now, up around 42%. We were up around 50%, close to 50% around Thanksgiving, but that rejection rate continues to fall right now as reefer capacity tends to, 42% is still an extremely high number. Spot rates are still through the roof, but we are starting to see the reefer market settle down a little bit more so than the van side. Van, the tender rejection rate staying around that 25% mark, not a lot of undulation there. Reefer, though, is starting to come back down with a little bit more significance. Again, the reefer market's roughly 15% or so of our tender data, and the overall market definitely not as representative. The market isn't as big. The reefer market isn't as big as the van side. So it's natural to see that kind of volatility with a smaller sample size.
The interesting thing that I'm seeing here, Zach, and this happens every year, but looking in Sonar, if you're a shipper or a carrier, really, or even a broker, I guess, looking at those, we're seeing these national trends, right? And we get locked into these national trends, but there's all these different the different markets that are going on in the different lanes, right? These microeconomies inside the national freight market, right? Economy. And so we're starting to see these switches in the inbound and outbound and the head haul volatility in some of these markets. I pointed out a few of those in FreightWaves Now this morning, but is that the DC's starting to release a lot of that deliveries due to the season right now and less coming in or more coming in? You see this in many markets like Greenville, South Carolina, did a complete flip where their outbound is dropping significantly and inbound is starting to spike. And you see the same in like Columbus, Ohio, and Harrisburg, exact opposite.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing there is, and you're referring to our head haul index, where you see inbound outperforming outbound for a while, and then the vice versa happens as inventory comes in from the West Coast mainly, or the ports, wherever it's coming from, and then it exits quickly. This is the nature of 2020 for freight and logistics. This very fragmented supply chain movement and transportation where you have all this inventory coming in all at once off a boat or whatever it is. It gets into the warehouse, then it leaves almost as quickly as it's coming in because they're already back ordered and backlogged. And this kind of waving, buckling effect is probably going to last into 2021. We talked about it the other day on the Midday Market update with Greg Miller. It's just the nature of having such a surging demand with, people not necessarily being ready for that, that amount of volume coming through their system.
Yeah, it's a bit of a bullwhip, snap head effect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zach, for those insights, my man. So we got some viewer comments.
Yeah.
Dooner corrected me. It's 1995, Twister, by the way, the year I was born. I should know that. And then Nico Brown reminded me that Philip Seymour Hoffman is in that movie, and he was fabulous in that movie. And he's actually never had a bad role. That's one actor I think that I can go down saying Philip Seymour Hoffman has never been in a bad movie.
Yeah.
Not once.
Yeah.
He's phenomenal.
Yeah, Dooner also says Into the Storm is a good recent movie. We've got Victoria Leica, transportation broker at Viva Transport LLC, saying good day in the house. Nico Brown is here and says Groundhog Day.
That's fair.
Which is an excellent movie.
It is an awesome movie.
And that's pretty fair. We forgot to ask Zach what his was, but I bet it's Sharknado-ish.
Let's toss it over to Anthony for some economic data. But before we do that, Anthony, you got to tell us, what is your favorite weather movie?
Favorite weather movie? Might have to go with Twister.
Yeah, I think we're all copping out and just saying Twister because it's the only
Has
one
that
we
been
know.
the consensus, everyone?
Yeah, pretty much.
Day after tomorrow, nobody.
All right, what's up? We got jobless claims popping up again?
Unfortunately, we do have jobless claims as always on Thursday, but this time we saw an increase to just around 853,000 initial jobs claims. And so this is a significant spike from last week's report, which was in the low 700s. And so this is actually the highest level since September of this year. And not exactly what you want to see when you're going into this busy holiday season or in the middle of a busy holiday season, is this spike in initial claims. We also saw that continuing claims, that measure of those that are remaining on those jobless claims benefits also increase. So we're seeing some rises on both sides.
Anthony, where do we have any insight on where the losses are coming from? What segment of the labor market it's coming from?
So I saw in a separate report estimates of where there are strengths and some weaknesses. So some of the strengths have been, of course, within transportation, warehousing, and things like that. But some of the weaknesses have been a bit in separate manufacturing in certain areas where we saw those that have been unable to work. Those are just temporary COVID cases where they had to quarantine. That kind of started some backlogs of orders and kind of slowed down some production. But we definitely saw some weaknesses within the services side from, of course, restaurants and those types of industries that are consumer facing and servicing facing that have been maybe put on hold as we see cases rise and certain states and certain regions start to shut down once more.
Anthony, do you see much of the reasoning for this just being an increase in COVID cases, or is there a bigger read-through that the wider economy is slowing a bit here?
I think there's a little bit of both. I think, of course, increasing COVID cases is going to play a big role, of course, when we're seeing more areas start to shut down, restaurants having to close doors once more. And of course, we're getting into those colder months and some of those colder regions where they're not able to really have people sitting outside in a socially distant manner. So that's going to play a role, of course, when we're seeing some slower economic growth. I think we're going to see not quite as strong as we had last quarter, but all this is really going to be concerning as we see the consumer strength overall. Of course, we haven't had that additional stimulus package, which a lot of people are looking forward to, hopefully by sometime mid-January, early February.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that stimulus package. Does this put pressure on those talks? I've seen recent, back and forth, $600, but and not the $1,200, and so on and so forth. Do you have any information on that?
Definitely. So you're absolutely right. There have been starts of talks once more. I think there's just one last hurrah before we kind of get started with the new administration in January. So there is a potential for something to go through, but there is still a lot of resistance on both sides on just kind of coming to that consensus of what the actual package should be. So it's likely that we will see an additional package, but it might have to wait until the beginning of 2021.
What about seasonal employment? Does that have an effect on these numbers, on the strong uptick? Would that normally, we look at this, Andrew and Anthony, and obviously the seasonal employment is not there like it normally would with all the brick and mortar and e-commerce and that type of stuff. Does that affect that number or not?
Definitely, there's still not a lot of upward pressure where we would see some of those seasonal employment. Of course, we're looking at malls and things like that where we have those around the clock hours. That's not going to be as promising as it has been in years past. So that's definitely going to be some upward movement that's going to be really kind of diminished here in COVID season, or now in the time of the coronavirus. So that's definitely an area that's going to be lacking when we're looking at seasonal employment. And it's just a lot of jobs claims already on a stubbornly high number going into the last month of the year. I mean, nearing that over 850,000 initial claims mark is devastating. And so it's going to be very telling to see how much pressure this actually puts on the federal government to put forth another stimulus package.
Anthony, looking forward over the next week, are there any data sets we should be looking forward to or looking out for?
Over the next week, of course, we're going to have those heavy-hitting reports, those macro reports of industrial production and retail sales. Of course, it's going to be a little bit lagged compared to our current situation, but for retail sales, expecting some slower growth, of course, as we see that consumer spending kind of tail back a little bit, but of course, we're going to still see some strength within e-commerce. So looking at non-store retail sales and, of course, looking at any kind of electronic shopping, that's going to remain strong, I'm sure. Building product materials likely going to remain strong as well. Industrial production, definitely going to be an interesting one to see, just to see if there's any kind of manufacturing momentum going into the last month.
All right, right about that. Thank you, Anthony, for those insights. I'll definitely be watching that industrial production number. We've seen some strong growth. It's popped back up after falling, I want to say about 12, 15%. It's now up about or down 7% year over year from pre-COVID levels. So that's one of the things that could keep this freight boom going a little bit further. If once consumer spending starts to decline, when people start going out and spending money on vacations and going out to concerts and whatnot, you might need a little bit of that industrial production as a support on the bottom side.
Yeah, absolutely. As they change the spending habits is what referring to there with the vacations and going out and changing that, flipping to the other side, right?
Yeah, going to need
but
some
you
business.
also have the support that should remain. I would imagine would be the increase in e-commerce. I mean, there's just a number of people who switched over that aren't going to go back, even though they can go to the brick and mortar. It just makes it easier, right? Order online and then go to the concert.
Yeah.
Right, and not worry about it, right?
I bet I'm gonna be willing to guess that Karl's going to have a lot to say about e-commerce and about flexible warehousing space. I think we've got him now. Karl, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, guys. How are you?
Doing great. So we've got Karl Siebrecht, co-founder and CEO at FLEXE. Karl, give us a little bit of background on yourself and FLEXE. What do you guys do there?
Sure. So the super quick background on me is over 20 years in software-based companies, most notably in companies that have been on the leading edge of driving innovation in big industries. So we started FLEXE in 2013, and we're one of the first proud logistics tech companies before that was a thing, really. I remember sitting on a panel with the CEO of FlexPort, the CEO of Cargomatic in 2014, and it was the token logistics tech panel at a CSCMP conference. Anyway, so we started FLEXE in 2013, and it was basically to bring flexibility into logistics. Look, our early observation was in this huge logistics industry, there are nodes and there are arcs, just like any network. The arcs are transportation lanes. The nodes are the warehouses. And there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of choice, a lot of options in these arcs. But in the nodes, these are, the economic construct of a warehouse is a long-term lease. So they're very fixed in space and time. If you could bring flexibility to that, you could really open up a lot of opportunity to make distribution networks and logistics overall much more flexible. So that's the sort of medium length answer to your question there.
And it's an excellent one. I love the nodes and arcs reference there. It makes perfect sense. So okay, and I understand that bringing that flexibility within the warehouse space. So, but achieving that is a little bit more difficult than just saying it, right? And that's where you guys come in, I would imagine, right? Is the management of that? Okay, now I can move my warehouse space around and flex, if you will, between how much capacity I need, but how do I manage all this stuff with my inventory changing places and size or capacity consumption?
Yeah, the key ingredient, as it is the case with other logistics tech companies, is software. So we have a common software platform that our big shipper customers, and again, we focus on big Fortune 500 enterprise customers, they plug into our platform once. So basically their order stream, their inventory system plugs in once. And then our platform also has WMS, warehouse management software, that is deployed across this very, very large network of warehouse service providers. So we have over 1,400 locations, actually over 1,500 locations now in our network, and they all use the same cloud-based WMS. So when a customer plugs in once to FLEXE, even if they may be different companies who are managing the labor in the sites, on the ground to pick, pack, and ship products, it's all managed through the same software platform. So you can control quality, you understand where your inventory is in real time, you've got an apples to apples view on all your orders. So again, it's software that makes this distributed, flexible model possible.
Karl, you said that you focus on Fortune 500 companies and some of the largest shippers in the country. Why is that? Is it that scale is necessary to make this model work, or is that just where the demand for flexible warehousing is?
We think there's demand from the head of the market to the tail of the market. And there's a number of companies in this space that service the tail of the market. We chose very early on to serve the head of the market. And look, these big companies, they already have very large warehouse distribution capabilities, whether they manage them first party or through 3PLs with some of the biggest contract logistics companies in the world. There's a lot of capital that they can deploy there, and they have deployed there. But the difference is that's a relatively fixed model. When you stand up a fulfillment center and you put automation in there, it may be $50 million, $100 million of CapEx on a 5-year term. As Amazon has trained us all to expect our e-commerce goods not in 3 to 5 days, but 2 days going to 1 day and increasingly same day, you just need more facilities. You've got to push inventory out closer to where people actually live to get it there quickly. And so instead of needing 1 or 2 big, massively automated facilities in the country, now companies need 12, 15, 40, 50, 100. Amazon just announced a month or two ago, they're going to put up 1,000 more warehouses in suburban markets. That's on top of the 200 they have. Most mortal companies can't afford 1,200 long.
Karl, is flexible warehousing demand as cyclical as consumer spending is? Like, I'm thinking in a typical year when roughly 35-40% of sales come after Thanksgiving. Is that when you guys see most of your demand as people try to flex up warehousing space leading into the holiday season? We might have lost. Yeah, we lost Karl's audio there for a minute, but
it's a great question.
But yeah, so I'd like to know that because I would think that especially if they're working with the largest shippers, if they know if they can foresee that they're going to have this excess demand coming in October and November and December, maybe that's when they see the highest demand for flexible warehousing.
Yeah, absolutely, and specific types of goods with specific demand in the different regions within the United States, right? So you change that stuff around, obviously. So there's got to be seasonality to the types of goods as well, right?
Yeah, it seems like we got Karl back.
Oh, good.
Karl, did you hear? I'll re-ask my question. It was that I was just wondering if flexible warehousing demand is as cyclical as consumer spending. Do you see a lot of your demand coming in the months leading up to the holiday season?
We do. We see a big surge in Q4, just as many businesses that operate in the e-commerce space do. But we see, our business is growing so quickly. We're seeing growth all throughout the year because it is a value prop for peaks, managing peaks and valleys and uncertainty, but it's also a value prop for getting a broader physical distribution, pushing inventory out closer to where people live. And so a lot of big companies, they have basically this sort of master node, satellite node mental model where, hey, I may have a handful of facilities that are leased. They're either run by my team or by a third party, 3PL. And then I'm adding to those a set of complementary satellite nodes for my fastest moving SKUs, for big and bulky SKUs to get them out closer to where the population centers are.
Very, very interesting. So through this year, there's been tremendous growth in this space, and it's a very interesting space, especially the tech side to it, to me, which you guys are in. How has things really changed this year with the e-commerce, and what are you looking towards in the future? You've just had a substantial raise. So how are things right now, and what's on the horizon for FLEXE?
Yeah, the business has grown really, really well. The pandemic, as tough as it has been, almost in every respect of the economy and society, really, it has been a big tailwind for e-commerce, as you guys have pointed out here many times. So that has helped fuel growth even beyond our expectations in our business. The other thing that has driven growth is just this hyper awareness now of the value of agility or supply chain resilience. This black swan event was an extreme example of something that frankly happens a lot. Tariffs drive supply chain disruptions. Labor market issues drive supply chain disruptions. Well, this was a massive disruption. And what that has done is it's just shined a big spotlight on the need for resiliency and agility. And so, that's the premise of our company. So we've seen a lot of demand come in due to that. So yes, as you mentioned, we just raised our Series C investment capital. And our focus is to continue to, first and foremost, prioritize our software platform. There's a lot more innovation that we need to build into this platform. Secondly, it's about continuing to invest in our commercial organization. We have a very high degree of demand from shippers and then also from warehouse partners that want to participate more fully in this market. So we're going to continue to invest behind that.
Karl, what about cold chain? Are you guys exposed to cold chain warehousing, or is it only dry, warm storage?
No, we operate in cold chain as well. It's a smaller part of our business. One of the issues with cold chain is it tends to be more, the requirements tend to be more bespoke or custom. And generally we are a great solution for things that don't need to be fully customized. If you need an exact precise temperature, you probably ought to go lease and build your own facility to handle that requirement. But there's a lot of cold chain that is, hey, within temperature band X to Y, that's the need, and we service that need really well.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much, Karl. So people want to learn more about FLEXE, get in touch, employer services. Where do they go?
Yeah, the best place to go is just go to our website. It is the source of information and the way to get connected with our team here. FLEXE.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much, my friend. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks. You as well.
Very interesting stuff, Andrew.
Yeah, I think it's a great. I wish we had more time with them because I'd like to know about who are the customers that are providing the warehousing space. Is it companies that own their own warehousing space? Like, Walmart owns its own DCs. If they have extra space, are they leasing out stuff like this, or is it the XBOs that own the 3PLs that own these type of warehousing space? I'd like to know.
Yeah, I'd like to know where that is and how that fluctuates with the market. It would when you need more capacity, right, during the fourth quarter is. There's less capacity.
Yeah, it's when everybody.
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of like it keeps going both ways. But from flexible warehousing space and the tech there to final mile, they kind of fit hand in hand pretty well, don't they? So our next guest that we have is Bill Catania, founder and CEO at OneRail. Bill, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Excellent, my friend. Can you give us a quick background on yourself and OneRail so our audience knows what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I appreciate that. My background, born and raised near Buffalo, New York. Been in startups my whole career. My last one is notable for reinventing the digital coupon space. So a little bit different than supply chain and logistics. That platform was the first ever that connected the point of sale to the cloud. And today powers, well in excess of 50% of the digital coupon transactions with clients all over the country, like Publix and Wegmans and Family Dollar and a lot more. OneRail was born from a disgruntled customer. I was the customer. And so I was at a major home improvement chain trying to buy an appliance and was told that it would take a long time to have it delivered, about 10 days. So I didn't see how that was possible. And so I went down a path of learning all I could about the space. In 2018, we built the first iteration of that platform. It was called Zapped. And so we started out like a digital courier. That was really where we started. But after doing that for about a year and talking to some of the big shippers, retailers, product manufacturers, all over the board, we realized that there was some really central themes that were holding back the scale of final mile. And those themes were lack of visibility, was lack of capacity. It was really an inability to orchestrate all the assets. So at that moment, we stopped being a digital courier, and we started building the first iteration of what is now known as OneRail. And we realized that there's plenty of supply out there. There's plenty of great couriers. There's platforms right down to individual operators that can get the job done. The problem is connecting supply and demand and making it work so that you can optimize the unit economics.
Bill, tell us about the recent partnership with Project 44. What does it entail and what does it mean for you?
Yeah, we're so excited about that. So, Project 44, of course, is a global leader in track and trace supply chain visibility across all modes virtually. And what OneRail has done by going out there, and accruing a mass of 4.5 million drivers, which we have across 120 delivery companies, it put us in a position where if we could combine all the inbound logistics capabilities of P44, marry that with the final mile execution and track and trace capability that OneRail has for final mile, you have a peanut butter cup, right? You put peanut butter and chocolate together. So what we are doing is very innovative, because if you can take all the signals from the first mile, right to the manufacturing floor, you can certainly do a better job informing the outbound. And with those signals, now we can start doing demand planning a lot better. We can do capacity planning a lot better. Oh, you know what? This shipment's going to be delayed a day, so we don't need to provision supply around the couriers that day. We can utilize that for other volume, that might be on demand where it's less predictable. So it makes delivery more efficient. It lowers the effective cost to deliver. It makes it more accurate, and ultimately results in happier customers.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and very well explained, the ability to plan that capacity moving out. And I loved your explanation of the orchestration of that capacity, because we talk about lack of capacity in the freight markets prior to this year. It was always that question of, is it lack of capacity, or just underutilized or poorly utilized, right? Poorly planned. And I love the fact that you took an issue that you had and created a company out of it, and talking about those different things. But one of the things I'm really interested in is the change in consumer behavior and that final mile, the final mile to consumer. Are you playing in that space, and what have you seen this year? What have the challenges been, and what do you see coming up?
Yeah, we are. So about a third of our delivery volume is to consumer. It's to residential. About 2/3 of it is B2B. We expect that to shift probably even more towards consumer with some of the new clients that we've been able to bring on the platform, which we're hopefully be able to talk about here in the next 30, 45 days. So what we see on the consumer side, competitive advantage is dependability. So whether I'm a consumer facing or upstream in the B2B channels, it's really all about dependability, and supply chain is competitive advantage to create that dependability. When we get out there and we talk to retailers, it's less about the effective cost to deliver, and it's more about, can it be dependable, and can we hang our brand on it, and am I going to be disintermediated by some process or brand in the process? And that's what OneRail does. We make it so the retailer is in total control. The shipper is in total control. It's their branding. The consumer loves that, because now it's not disintermediated by messaging and branding of couriers. The couriers are needed. They're needed to provide the supply. The retailer needs to retain the branding. And so that's been a really good, it's been a big benefit for both the consumer and the retailer.
Hey, Bill, so I cover retail supply chain here at FreightWaves. So I did want to ask about that consumer-facing portion of your portfolio that you said was about 1/3. What type of stuff moves through your platform? What type of goods are you moving? Is it big, heavy, bulky stuff, or is it small stuff, or everything in between?
Well, that's a great question. That's really what started to cause the pivot. So as we started to look at, the size of items that are being delivered from parcel all the way up through 8,000 or 9,000 pounds of flooring, we do a lot of work for one of the major home improvement retailers. And in doing that, we realized there's a huge diversity of items. And that's where the notion of orchestration in my brain really crystallized was, we've literally delivered hand puppets, that weigh less than a pound. I don't know why, but somebody wanted that same day. We don't ever question that. But hand puppets from a home improvement chain all the way up to 7,000, 8,000 pounds of flooring. And so that's what's beautiful about what OneRail does. We integrate with the ERP, point of sale, OMS. We're announcing a huge partnership here in the next month on the ERP side. And so whether it's Oracle or SAP or Toshiba, we're integrating at the demand signal. And so once we're integrated at the demand signal, we can see the cube, the weight, we can understand the origin and destination, the service level. We take that order data in a millisecond, 100, 200 milliseconds, we turn that into a delivery order. And so the beauty of our platform is we will align the unit economics of the delivery with the type of delivery it is. So the hand puppet's not going on a box truck. The hand puppet's not going in a cargo van. It's going to go to DoorDash or Postmates or Lyft, which are 3 of the carriers in our network. So we're going to optimize those unit economics every time to make sure we hit the service level and make the customer happy. And most importantly, don't erode the gross margin of the retailer.
Bill, you just mentioned that Uber, Postmates, and DoorDash were in your network. Can you explain that to me? I was just about to ask what your thoughts were on Uber Connect, the most recent announcement yesterday that they're going to expand their parcel delivery network out to 2,400 cities. Can you explain your connection with them?
Yeah, so we work with Postmates today, which of course is an Uber company, and the way that we work with third-party couriers, again, we don't have any assets. We're 100% asset free. We don't work with individuals, so we don't work with individual contractors. We only work with companies that are in commercial delivery. So when we integrate with a platform like Postmates or DoorDash, we're pushing deliveries to them once they've been analyzed and matched, and we understand the properties of that delivery. We then match that delivery. Let's say with Postmates, and we're pushing it to their transportation system with RESTful services. And then once Postmates gets it, they look at it and say, you know what, we're going to dispatch it to driver X. When driver X gets that on their phone, they don't need to use a OneRail app because we're integrated with the carrier. We're integrated with Postmates. So we start getting latitude and longitude immediately. And we start reporting that visibility in our control tower. We provide a customized ETA. We have the courier data, but we're looking at weather. We're looking at traffic. We're looking at events around that area. And we power visibility to the store level, to the consumer, to fleet ops, and then our own team is using it to manage the delivery. We even manage the logistics of the delivery. So OneRail is really it's technology. It's cutting edge technology plus human. Right? We have that logistics management layer to make sure when there is exceptions, we're managing them.
Yeah, that's key. Marrying the technology with the human aspect of it is that now you got a full package, a great value add. I'm interested, Bill. The first mile of reverse logistics is the return. Do you play in that space, or are there plans to move into that space?
Yeah, absolutely. I describe it like a transmission. It doesn't care what direction it goes. So you can put it in reverse just as easily as going forward. We do have some partnerships that we're working on. We don't plan to be the system of record for returns. So our goal is to partner with the best companies that are processing returns, that are on the cutting edge of digitizing that service and making it, removing the friction. I mean, I think of returns as just laden with friction. And if you want to compete with Amazon, everybody wants to think about how fast can you get the product to the consumer. You really need to be thinking about how fast can you get the product back from the consumer if something isn't working, so you can reduce that risk. And so, yeah, we're very focused on reverse, but just as a fulfillment mechanism and as an orchestrator of the logistics.
Yeah, Bill, you're exactly right. I saw a recent survey that said 90% of customers are willing to use a brand again if they have a good returns process.
Absolutely.
And that's something that Amazon has made completely standard. Bill, I want to thank you for your time, but before you go, can you tell everybody where to go if they want to request some of your services?
Yeah, you can go to our website, OneRail, ONERAIL.io.
All right.
We'd love to hear.
Excellent.
Thanks, Bill. Have a great
you.
weekend.
Thanks for having me. You too.
Excellent stuff. I love both those spaces because I've not worked in flexible warehousing, and it's very much needed in a changing space and technology there. Final mile I have worked in, but it's still very interesting to me in a space that a lot of people don't understand, especially the reverse logistics part of it.
Yeah, they're both growing like weeds, and they're both going through this digital revolution, as is the entire industry. But those two especially, because they're so they're very complex things to bring to market. So you want to toss it over to, I think we got Nick Austin going to give us our last weather update of the show.
Absolutely.
Nick, what you got for us?
Well, just a quick recap on the weather. We can just take a look at the critical events map. Just real quickly, once again, this area here from mainly on Saturday, from late Friday night through Saturday, we're going to see some heavy snowfall here and there, some strong winds, but not a major storm, but it certainly will be a nuisance for any drivers having to head through here. We're talking about from around Omaha and Des Moines all the way to near Chicago, Milwaukee, and into parts of Michigan. So, but also want to give a quick shout out, Rhonda. She's one of our regular viewers. She's out in Phoenix, and she says it's raining there today. Finally, she said they haven't had rain since August.
Oh my.
So she's really happy about that. She says it's like their white Christmas. So I'm really glad that they're getting some wet weather out there. They definitely do need it. And we were talking, gentlemen, about weather movies earlier. Another one that you must see It's called Hurricane Heist. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's one of those movies. It's so bad it's good. You know what I mean?
I love those movies.
It was pretty entertaining though, and it's literally what it sounds like. A group trying to pull off a heist during an approaching hurricane. I mean, it was a decent flick. Certainly worth checking out. But there is a Twitter survey up now on my Twitter. It's @FreightWeather. It's also on the @FreightWaves Twitter. I've listed 4 movies. Need some more feedback on it. Still a couple hours left. I listed 4 weather movies. So just pick which one off the list you think is your favorite. Sharknado, of course, that one has to be on there. The Poseidon Adventure, the original from the early 1970s, and then Snowpiercer, which just came out earlier this year, and The Perfect Storm from 20 years ago, which was a pretty good flick. So that's up on those Twitter accounts right now.
That's a great point. Perfect Storm. Nobody even mentioned that.
No, I didn't. I've never seen it. I've never seen Snowpiercer either, and I've been meaning to, because that one I've actually heard great things. Snowpiercer. It's a new movie. It came out this year. But yeah, it looks. I think is Idris Elba in that? I think he is.
I don't know.
In any case, thank you, Nick, for the weather update. You have a great weekend, man.
I'm gonna have to check some of those things out. You know what else you need to check out?
The virtual event next week.
It is.
Oh yeah.
That's right. That's
North
exactly
American
what it's
Supply Chain.
North American Supply Chain on December 15th, right? Virtual event. What are we going to learn there, man?
So we're going to, there's enormous uncertainty facing supply chains, whether it's geopolitical disagreements such as Brexit or the U.S.-China relations or trade agreements like the USMCA. Import and export restrictions are so much more, and many businesses are hesitant to invest in sourcing and supply chain improvements until that does settle. So we are going to cover every aspect of the supply chain. Who is going to be our keynote next week? Do you know? No? Well, we're going to have it for you. We got a full agenda online at live.freightwaves.com. You can go in there and check out the agenda of what it's going to be next week. Great Quarter Guys is going to be doing a show on the Thursday. I'm not sure what our topic is going to be yet, but it's going to be fascinating. I think we might talk about Shopify. I've been trying to get somebody from Shopify to talk because it wouldn't be a North American Supply Chain Summit if you didn't have somebody from the biggest e-commerce company outside of Walmart, Target, and Amazon.
It makes perfect sense.
I'd love it.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah, it'll be great to listen to these industry leaders and find out what's going on. We've been talking about the supply chain overall all year long and the diversification and the future proofing of it. And looking at the North American one, obviously there's a lot of questions up in the air on how to get that corrected or move forward.
How do you build future resiliency and redundancy in our supply chain? We definitely had disruptions this year in every category and every subsegment. So I hope we take a lot away from 2020. I hope that we learn things from it, and I think we're going to learn and see a lot of those lessons articulated next week on the 15th.
Yeah, absolutely. And tomorrow on What the Truck, we have Eli Solar, noon tomorrow on What the Truck. We have Eli Solar, president of Truckered In, on how they're changing the way drivers check in, right?
Okay.
Another tech and another expansion there that's been highlighted this year,
and
right?
Another problem that needs to get solved in the industry.
Absolutely. The visibility thereof and solving. There's so many issues right there that could be solved by tech. It's we could go on and on and on. Tracy Taylor from Stone Mountain Christmas Tree Farms on tree shortages and the Christmas tree logistics.
Have you seen the Christmas tree demand this year? I read that from ESI Evercore, they estimated tree sales are up 30% year over year.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was the title of the article was Tree Sales Are Telling a
Real or
Holly
fake?
These are real trees. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not sure about fake trees. They may be even up higher.
I think both are up, but Real Tree is doing quite well. And Real Tree is actually much, much better for the environment to do it. Did you know like 30 million are harvested, but they have to plant like 500 million in order to make that 30 million each year?
I love it.
Make it work. So
yeah, and then the other things are I'm sure, burning nasty plastics and everything else. being made as cheap as possible in China.
Yeah, exactly. We're also going to have Scott Cornell, Transportation Lead and Crime and Theft Special at Travelers Insurance, on what freight is targeted for theft during the holidays. So if you were the Grinch, which one were you going to... What are you looking at? If you're going to... What are you thieving off a truck?
What am I thieving off a truck?
Not that you have before.
I mean, I think if you could get a stash of those PS5s right now, you'd be in good shape. I mean, they're reselling for like double the store price right now on StockX and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Amanda Poole from DMX Logistics on mental health around the holidays, which is very important. A very What the Truck holiday special on December 4th. Look for that. You can find all the FreightWaves shows on demand on FreightWaves TV app or on your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Thank you, Andrew Cox, for joining me today.
Have a great weekend, y'all.